Well, Sam, here we are again. Analysts Gone Wild, Thursday morning, afternoon, evening, depending where you're at. But welcome, everybody. Robert Kramer here with more insights and strategy. We got some great gentlemen on the phone here, the StreamYards. So why don't we introduce ourselves, starting with Charles. Tell us a little bit about yourself, what you've been up to lately, and what the word of the day is.
Hey, well, thank you, Robert. Happy to be here. Charles Brennan with Nucleus Research. I manage all the ERP supply chain practice here at the firm. And for those of you guys who aren't familiar with Nucleus, we're a global provider of technology research and advisory services that focuses on return on investment. And that's mainly done through end user conversation. So, for me, I've been traveling a lot, was in Las Vegas 2 weeks in a row. So that was very interesting. I had the privilege to come back to Florida for a couple of days, but went back last week as well. Just been very, very busy year.
NetSuite
yes, was at NetSuite and then was at AI World. I know there was a few conferences going on in Vegas during the Suite World, so first week of October, and then last week was at AI World. So been very, very busy, and then obviously with everything else going on, this year has just flown by. I don't know about you guys. I feel like I blinked my eye 5 times, and now we're almost in November. So the word of the day for me is just consistency. Staying consistent. No, it's not the best sexiest word, but just trying to stay consistent in everything I do. So happy to be here once again.
Good. Thomas, how we doing? How's the move?
Oh, well, I'm settled in now. So, we are in this house for more than 3 months now. So,
like Charles said, the year's been flying by.
And, the year's flying by, and I had the pleasure or unpleasure of doing some domestic and international travel as well, like Charles did. So
where are you based, Thomas?
I'm based near Charleston.
Oh, okay, nice, beautiful area.
Used to be in Seattle. A nice, beautiful airport with the little disadvantage that there are not that many direct connections. Yeah. So it's not a hub, but it's great. It's great.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome.
And in contrast to Charles, I wave the CRM and CX flag, so to make sure that the demand side of the house is covered as well. All of us are doing AI, right?
Yes. Oh no. Yes. It is everywhere in every conversation that I know we're all having. So.
Well, they changed the cloud world to AI world.
Yeah. Yes. That very much in line with that. There was plenty of AI talk there. So
So Sam, the Blue Jays. I heard that they won the last game, and pretty exciting for you.
Yeah, it's very exciting. And that's the sort of word or 2 words that I wanted to pick for this week, because I don't know if there is going to be anything more exciting than the Blue Jays. But we have 75% representation of ERP in the room. So today's word I'm going to pick is ERP. And we are going to make sure that Thomas is going to get really good dose of ERP today through the stories that we have.
After all, I got an SAP background, so that's
there's
Sam, a bit of
real
ERP.
Quick, I still think everything's moving towards that event-driven, or maybe a system of record to a system of action, which the Blue Jays are doing it. But it's interesting how data is it's much more prevalent. I think the problem is much larger than we think, because the hurdle of data, no one's really spent a lot of time getting their data in order in their processes. So by what I just mentioned, I think it just presents such a dramatic picture for 2026.
Yeah.
Are you trying to suggest that Blue Jays are winning because they are events driven? Robert and I always like to pick on him because of his article that he did. Guys, if you have not checked his article, please do check.
Thank you.
It's for 4.
I don't know, the Blue Jays. I come from the St. Louis Cardinal world, so I like the underdogs, which they're not such a big underdog, but I guess they are to the Dodgers because the Dodgers talk so loud and they spend a lot of money.
They spend a lot of money, the Dodgers.
Yeah. The Blue Jays are number 3, right, Sam?
5, actually. I'm going to correct my position now. I have
Alright.
my data down. So they are number 5, and they have roughly 100 million deficit, I would say, in terms of the payroll. So yeah, you can probably call them underdog if you want to call. Because in that money, I think you can probably get 2 Sohei Ohtani, which is a big deal. Obviously, I mean, the real differentiator for Dodgers right now, if you have one, he's the guy. Otherwise, I don't know. About everything else, even.
Is he going to pitch this season?
Yes.
Yeah. Start or just come in?
No, I think he's going to do equally well in both. Last time, I think he pitched it was just single-handed, I would say, just one-man show in one of the games, which is it's just hard to compete with him.
Well, let's see how it goes. We start tomorrow night, and we'll get to that at the end of our podcast here. But let's jump into the first one with Genstore raises $10 million in seeding. This is not I guess that dramatic, but it's Genstore is an AI native e-commerce platform. They launched last year, and they are one of the vendors that I believe is looking to get more into AI and to help out with some of these legacy bolt-ons. It's the early stage, and they're talking a lot about agents, which I want to get into agents a little bit as we continue with some of these stories. How big of a deal are they, and do they fit everybody's enterprise, timeline? But there's a differentiation that they're having with that, I believe, and but it's also a challenge. So is this a marketing or is it a reality or both? And what's the business impact? Who wants to get started?
I took a deep dive into this company over the past couple of days, and I think from a high level, it does sound interesting. They have like a full AI agent team with some very cool names. I know one like super agents called Genius or whatnot, and they have a pretty decent pricing model also. But there really isn't much. They have also an app store too, where you can install applications such as TikTok, drop shipping apps. Which is great and all, but there wasn't really much talk on, integrations with, thinking about a Shopify or whatever these small to mid-sized e-commerce businesses are utilizing. We go back to the data conversation you're bringing up earlier, Robert, is, these agents sound great, but, what context do they have? What data are they operating on to help out with, campaign launches, analytics, product launch, whatever that may be. So I think from a high level, this stuff sounds great, but I think this is ultimately a kind of a vibe coded YC type startup position here, and I hope it works out for them. It seems very interesting right now, and there wasn't much talk about the data aspect of it, because agents sound great, but in context to your organization and to your data, where does that kind of fit in? And I didn't see too much of that, so I don't know about what you guys think of it, but that's my kind of first overall thoughts. And the data topic's huge, Robert. So
yeah, I'll come back to that after Thomas, maybe.
Same thought, pretty much. So they are addressing smaller companies which are predominantly looking at Shopify right now.
Sure.
With that, they have a formidable competition.
Yeah.
And what they have is a story. The data mode, I don't really buy in, especially if they are looking at staying compliant with privacy regulations, because then you can use only, unless you have consent, data that is within the little companies, which by definition don't deliver that much data, means the context that those agents can deliver is limited. And well, I wish them all the best, but I think they have a pretty steep uphill battle.
Yeah. So when you look at agents, when someone says I have 300 agents, does that work for you, and does that excite you? Because I don't know what the magic number is. Is the more the magic number that works with my processes? Because I think things like procurement and some of those
numbers game.
Right, but then there's another part that I think is super important is I refer to Industry 5.0 a lot, where it's a collaboration of humans and robots. So you were asking the humans to be more strategic. Now, who says that your team is able to do that with the agents that you're employing. So I think it's way more complicated. And you go back to what Charles said with the data. I think this is a more of a reflection of what companies need to do to get ready for this, and they're getting pushed that this is the next generation when they don't know if it's going to be suitable for them or not. But I don't know, Sam, what do you think?
Yeah, so there are definitely a lot of different layers to this conversation, to be completely honest. And in my eyes, when I look at this, and I have not done as much deeper dive as Charles or Thomas maybe, but when I was looking at this, and I don't know why the integration with Shopify, mentioned here. I don't know if they are more of the add-on. My take on this was that they are creating a new category, which is going to be obviously AI native commerce, which is a new category, and we had been reviewing a lot of different investments from the private equity perspective as well as investors, and they are going after AI native category across the board, whether you talk about ERP, CRM, and commerce. And I'm slightly shocked, to be completely honest, because this is the first commerce story that I have personally seen. So personally, I'm very excited that, okay, somebody is doing that. But at the same time, here's my other take on this, right? So I don't know whether you guys have followed the announcement related to ChatGPT, and they are partnering with Shopify. So Shopify listings are going to be available through the majority of the AI platforms. Obviously, if ChatGPT is going to do that, I don't know if any other LLMs are going to be behind in that game. So most likely how our commerce is going to work is we are going to talk to a real chatbot, which is called LLM and ChatGPT these days, right? So based on that understanding, I don't know how many companies are going to go to the brand sites, because 90% of the Shopify platforms, and that is the whole world, I guess, right, is going to be published through ChatGPT. So I guess, so my take is different, right? So number one, these guys are trying to promote AI native commerce. I think there is a play for that. But at the same time, now you are not only competing with Shopify, you are actually competing with ChatGPT. So how do you compete with that?
It's not ChatGPT. Yeah. ChatGPT is something in the background. So you're also competing with search. So this is a very young company, very young. I mean, they're at best 18 months or so. So if you ask me very bluntly, I'd say their game is building something, getting their name out, and getting acquired soon.
Yeah. Because I think that the $10 million, especially in the AI world today.
Because everybody and their dog will offer something like, not agentic, but conversational creation of shops. Everybody and their dog will offer conversational interaction with the shop for the customers. Every other dog has integrations into backends, which they don't, well, at least don't talk about. And many of the other dogs don't have a conversational interface yet. So it means they're just there to get acquired.
Yeah, that's all
a bigger player. But that's my cynic opinion. Well, it's not cynic, actually, it's a good play.
Hey, if they can get bought by 5-10 times what they it's a good deal.
I mean, Salesforce can't do it yet. Well, they are working hard on it. The SAP store can't do it. WooCommerce can't do it. So take all these smaller and bigger e-commerce players on this planet that are already big in the market. They don't have this capability yet, and they need to build this capability, and that takes time.
Yeah.
Here they have the savior for the time.
Well, Sam, any closing thoughts? Go to the next one.
Let's go to the next one. I think we have covered this one pretty well.
So Tray.ai, they launched an agent hub. So I'm not terribly familiar with them, but it's again, we're getting back into AI adoption, and we're getting into a hub to help build or use pre-built agents. Do you all feel that agents, that companies want to build their own or use other companies in the marketplace, or a combination? And what do we think of this deal?
I see it as a combination. So I see a big barrier in terms of, have my end user conversations where customers are typically saying that a lot of the agents that are put out, and kind of going back to what we were saying earlier, are really kind of put out for agent's sake, and they really don't align with the organization and maybe the use case they're trying to establish and automate. So I think the advantage of having something like an agent builder or these applications that allow you to create these agents and give the context to them can help with that or decrease that barrier or lower that barrier, because organizations are then able to customize them and build them to their liking. But I still think that there is not much discussion around pricing and consumption based pricing for these type of tools, right? So you can build these agents, ingest as much data as you want, and then you get a nice pretty bill at the end of the month. And I think that's something that needs to be talked about a bit here too. But 100% when it comes to adoption, I think this is something that is a great enabler to increase it. But I still think it's a little bit, I have some questions around the pricing, but those are my first thoughts.
Good thoughts.
Similar
Thomas,
thoughts. I mean, there are every big vendor, enterprise vendor, builds an agent hub.
Yes.
By one name, names it one name or another. Yeah. Every vendor out there creates a library of agents that can do that or something else. And all of them are serving as copy templates or can be adopted directly, whether that's a good idea or not. So from that perspective, what Tray.ai announces here is, well, it doesn't have any differentiator actually, because the development environments are there as well. So if I look at NICE call center, they just acquired Cognigy. They have the platform for building secure agents at scale. They have a platform for it. They have even a market for it, a direct market with the NICE call centers. And look at ServiceNow, look at HubSpot, they are doing it. Look at SAP, of course, Salesforce, of course, Oracle, they're all doing the same. Yeah. Microsoft, big and small, they are all doing that. So they need to put really some beef around that messaging to be not more noise. And this press release to me is noise.
Well, yeah. Big differentiators. This isn't, I think, correct me if I'm wrong. I'm also not really as familiar with Tray.ai, but are they an integration platform as a service provider, right? So I think that maybe that's their differentiator as compared to like an Oracle, SAP, Microsoft. Because Thomas, you're 100% right. I've seen it. I've seen agent builders pretty much get built out at most of these large enterprise application vendors. So I think maybe that's the little edge. Is that?
Yeah, well, if they're an integration platform at Zap here, they're also going there.
Yeah,
so
no, that's fair. Tons of comments.
The application vendors have it and they need it.
Yeah,
and that's why this is just more noise without something around it. Heck, a new HR agent. What can this funny thing do? And does Workday probably have a similar one?
Yeah, so this is very interesting. And Robert, I really do like your question, because that sort of tees up this conversation overall when you said, okay, would you develop or would you buy something? And that is the similar argument that we have had for the commercial software as well. Not commercial software, maybe I should say software, because when you make it commercial, that means, you are probably doing some sort of transaction there with respect to that, right? So the conversation is going to be very similar. Do you buy or do you build, right? So this is buy versus build conversation. And that is going to be prevalent with the AI agents as well. And the way I see this as more of the low-code, no-code version of the AI agent world. So obviously, you are going to have the traditional LLMs as well as the development platforms. I think Google Gemini, they have announced that they are opening up their development platform pretty much for everybody. So how does that compare to this? So my take on this is going to be the kind of comparison that you have between maybe AWS, Azure versus something like Creatio. Or ServiceNow or Pegasystems. From the CRM world, yes, they can pretend that they are CRM, but I mean, traditionally, they were sort of the low-code, no-code platform, including APN, I would say. They were sort of the low-code, no-code version. So this, in my mind, would be low-code, no-code version. Now, Is low code, no code a complete noise? Possible. I have never liked that as a category, to be completely honest. Because it helps in some way, but it also hurts in other ways, depending upon who you are. If you are going to be sort of the business audience who has never developed, in your life, then you can probably utilize low code, no code. But at the same time, when you talk about things such as your migration, then you are going to have, I don't know how many different challenges. So it's a great starter, but it's not scalable overall. So that's my take overall with respect to these low code, no code platform. Now, do they have a place in the AI world? I would guess so, right? Because this is going to give them the speed. I don't necessarily agree whether this is going to be the integration platform. This is the core development platform, but more low code, no code, not necessarily iPaaS. So iPaaS of AI world is going to be something like Versari. And I don't know whether you have reviewed them or not. And I think they are the only one right now who are doing the AI native iPaaS.
But on the other hand, look at the summary that's on the slide, which is probably a good one. Yeah. Where is the value? Where is there a statement that talks about the value of what is there? It's function and feature.
Yeah.
There's nothing about value, and this is concerning.
Yeah.
And
Good point.
looking at the low code, no code, every agent builder starts with low code, no code. Every single one.
Well, we got some pretty good stories coming after this one, though.
Speaking to value,
yeah. So
this is the time, guys. I mean, this
This-
is what
this
we're
is-
waiting for, right?
yeah, this is an interesting one, and the background is a little bit, I guess, complicated. And this is why we talk about transformation being such a daunting, situation. And I'm not sure, guys, if it gets much better with what everybody says. Just go to the cloud. I have all these tools to get your data here and do this and do this. But the story with this one, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, I think it goes back 10 years ago, Sam.
Yeah, 2015. Yep.
So there was a merger between these two companies, Zimmer and Biomet, right? And then they signed the contract a year later. They put schedules in place. I mean, this was like a 70 was it $1 million work order, or $100 million work order, or something like that to do this. But the go live wasn't really until last year. So there's, I will say that I'm a big believer that the customer owns something always, and there's major, transparency, fear factor, change management that has to be put in place before you get out of the ground. When you buy something, like when you buy a new car, you're so excited to drive it, and all of a sudden the wheels fall off 2 weeks later, but you don't see that the wheels were put on wrong until 2 weeks later, and maybe you didn't screw them in, and maybe they didn't screw in what they needed to on the customer end to move things in the right direction. They had blinders on. But whenever, Sam, you can say this, and Charles as well, when you go through any transformation, you should be ready for your processes to be torn apart and redone for the better. And the merging two companies, I think, is a major task. This has happened a ton in the medical field, when you merge two companies like this. But I think, I'm not sure who's right or wrong on this, but I would say that it's a consistent problem. What do you all? And there's more to say, obviously, but
I would say it's on everyone. I'm sorry to cut you off, but I think the biggest thing here, right, it goes back to the merger, right? Zimmer and Biomet, they each had their own various ERP systems. Now you consolidate that. Now the whole organization has, however many ERP systems, and then they, contract Deloitte, who helps them build this business case over 10 years, showing that, okay, you make this $130 million investment, you should get a $320 million return, whatever that may be. And you're 100% right, Robert, that these organizations, when they go through this large transformation, they need to understand, what's our current landscape, right? What do we need the vendor to do? What challenges? What are these biggest challenges? When they're building that business case, they shouldn't just rely on a Deloitte who's probably getting pushed by an SAP. And I'm sorry, Thomas, it's getting pushed by an SAP to build their products, right? At the end of the day, they need to have that an evaluation team internally saying, okay, here, this is what we want out of the deployment. This is what we need to do, right? Maybe if we need to rip up these processes and change them up, this is what we need to do. And I think kind of having that forward-looking view and ultimately kind of establishing that team is something that is often overlooked. And going back to those best practices that everyone talks about and maybe be no-brainers, but oftentimes aren't implemented. So I think that's just a case of this all over the map. I think this falls on everyone. It is not just Deloitte's fault. It's not just SAP's fault. It's not just Zimmer Biomet's. It's just a concoction of every single person or every single party in this kind of not pulling their weight and pointing fingers in multiple different directions. It seems like, right? And ultimately, oh no, we sued Deloitte now. So
yeah, well, if something like this happens, it's usually the fault of all three parties.
Yes,
the vendor probably oversold their capabilities to some extent. The client, the customer, in all likelihood, doesn't work on their processes, especially in a merger situation. So what regularly happens, and I don't know whether this happened there, is that they just do the same on another system, the same old shit on another system. And especially in a merger situation where you compound the problems with that. And the partner, the implementation partner, often proves to be not strong enough to call BS on what the customer actually wants. And then just does in the having the incentive of a good number of billable hours instead of doing their consulting work, which often is also not asked for by the customer. One needs to say that as well. I don't want to blame Deloitte here. They can do that, but often they are not allowed to.
Yeah, so these stories are very interesting. And Robert, I think you started this conversation that they started in 2015, which is a real thing. A lot of vendors in the market, they are arguing for 24-hour go live. And this is 10-year rollout, and 10-year rollouts are real thing even today in the market, to be completely honest.
24-hour roll. You said 24 hours for what? A green field for a small company? I mean,
let's not talk about field. You cannot get into all of those details, man. It's go live. Let's focus on that.
I mean, not to interrupt you, but you got to be practical. When someone says, "Hey, we've done this in 3 months. We've done this." Done what? Like if I'm changing my whole landscape of my company with 10 plants, it's not going to happen like that unless there's I don't know.
Robert, you have nothing to worry about. You just need 24 hours. Do you have 24 hours now? Can you sign the check?
Yeah, I can sign it. Sign it. Send it over. All right, go ahead. I'll wait.
So this is very interesting overall, because these are, again, real deal, meaning that is happening in the market at this point of time. Companies, even though this has happened, I don't know, probably a million times, but they still don't learn from these lessons. And you are absolutely right, guys, that you cannot blame just one party. And that's why I always like to call ERP implementations are almost like comedy of errors, right? Because, you are not only going to have the misalignment and misaligned expectations from the get-go, but you are also going to have competing priorities, and they are very intentional. To be completely honest, okay? And sometimes, with the people, and you spoke about business case, how real are those and how realistic are those business cases? I'll tell you a real example, because, sometimes what happens is, let's say if I'm the CIO, okay? So my biggest priority right now is to save my job. It's as simple as that. Okay? If people don't get it, then, okay, I don't know. Probably they don't live in the real world. But everybody's trying to save their jobs. Okay, you talk about CIO, CFO. How do you save your job, right? Obviously, when you are getting into something like this, your number one priority is going to be you need to get the project approved. If the project does not get approved, then the project does not get anywhere. And how do you get projects approved? Okay, definitely you don't want to talk about $172 million. It's never going to get approved. As simple as that. Okay, so what you want to do is you want to cut some sort of foot in the door deal. And what is that foot in the door deal? Hey, buddy, don't worry about it. 24-hour implementation. Maybe it's going to cost a couple of $1 million. I'm not too sure how much it is going to cost.
I'm not too sure.
That's how you get business case approved.
What
happens afterwards once you have the contract? Okay, this is the reality, guys.
I think they should have contacted Gupta ERP to help them out here. I think that's what should have happened.
Then you need 2.4 milliseconds.
Yeah.
You don't even need 24 hours, man.
Yeah.
I'm telling you. You don't even need money.
Yeah, Just get it rolled out.
Yeah, exactly.
It's basically it. Go in cheap.
So what's your advice, Sam? I mean, what do these companies need to do? Because this is some of what you do is working with the clients. What's your advice to avoid this type of disaster? Because in the end, I will say that no one's going to win on this. It's going to drag it out. They're probably going to throw SAP out because if they win, they're not going to be able to use the product probably. Or they're going to be, they're going to own it on their own. The support's going to be changing. I don't know. It's who knows what's going to happen, but this is a major disruption, and the
I feel like
litigation.
they're almost in too deep with SAP, right? Are they going to then go to an Oracle Fusion or a Microsoft Dynamics 365? I mean, then that might be another 10-year implementation. I don't know where you measure if you're in too deep or not, where you kind of just stick it out and, like you said, then take ownership of the project and of SAP, which which could be interesting as well. But I don't know. I don't know if they're in too deep or not. I think that's kind of, in my opinion, they might be. So.
Guess what? It'll be the same result, whatever they choose, because they will do it the same way again. And that comes to Robert's question for advisors. It starts with be honest to yourself as a customer. Be honest to yourself. The problem there is that the executives who decide upon this type of project are long gone when it fails.
Yeah.
Well, I think that was a big thing in this. There was a CIO transition. There was like an executive board transition. So like to that point, leadership changed a few times at Zimmer Biomet. So I think as an organization, you need to look at yourself now and where you want to be 5-10 years in the future and say, hey, listen, okay, we are struggling here. I think that's when you're building that business case. You got to tackle those few challenges. I think organizations, they try to, build Rome and, a day when you need to start with just a few things and kind of expand from there. So, I think it's just a recipe for disaster overall.
But Sam, do you feel that some of these issues occur mostly because of the customer, not the vendor? Because the vendor, I mean, they're following protocols and processes and things of that nature. So the customer, do they have? Does the staff are they not strategic enough? Do they not have the right staff in place? Were they over optimistic on the implementation? Did they processes bad, or their files not set up correctly? I mean, what do you think the problem is, or it could be all over the place?
Yeah, so 90% of these problems are very man-made, and that is going to be aligned to your favorite topic, which is going to be change management, right? And number one problem, I would say, is people don't necessarily understand how to navigate the political structures around ERP implementations. They feel that this is some sort of magic wand technical problem that some developers can solve magically. Okay, that's not how this is supposed to work. Okay, so this is supposed to be, again, the way you would organize your company. You have to learn to navigate these political structures, resistance, how people work. You need to figure that out. And I don't know whose job that is going to be. That's not Deloitte's job. That's not executive's job. That is not company's job. Somebody has to own it. So who is that? That has to be, the leader, the champion. And that's why, I mean, sometimes with these implementations, the independent advisors or the consulting firms, they play that role because they are setting the expectations with everybody. They are showing the mirror before people make mistake that, okay, this is what is going to happen. This is the reality. This is the truth. So I don't know what is the right way of doing it. When you are talking about 10 years priority and when your political party is going to change in the world, nobody talks about 10 years because you are only worried about next 4 years. Everybody's worried about 4 years. And they are only going to, claim the wins, whatever they have done in that 10 years. And then it becomes somebody else's problem, not my problem, because I already moved on. So again, and this is the problem that I think the whole industry is trying to solve. And that's why they all are trying to claim that, okay, you don't have to go through these 10-year long implementation, but that only takes them in the wrong direction. In my personal view, because they are not teaching the right things, how to do this in the right manner, how to set the realistic expectations, how to not believe in the sales pitches and marketing pitches, which is full, on internet. I guess everybody is just talking about that, and they are simply adding to the problem.
Yeah, and that's on all three parties.
Yeah, I wonder how long this lasts.
The salesperson who sells the product is on another account in 2 years, maybe 3.
Yeah.
The consulting company is not or the implementation, the SI, let's say the SI is not really interested in naming a huge amount of dollars / billable hours early.
Yeah.
And the executive wants, the client executive, wants a quick win as well, knowing that they are not at that position in 4 or 5 years from now. So there's a whole conglomerate of problems that actually act like cogwheels. So it's a totally wrong set of incentives, which is compounded probably by short-termism caused by quarterly reporting requirements.
Yeah.
So with that, no one is also inclined to commit to big numbers early. That's when it happens.
Yeah. Could not agree more.
So this is an eternal problem everywhere. I've seen that for banks, for manufacturing companies.
The biggest problem I also see, though, is, and this is where I think some of the problems exist, Sam and Charles and Thomas, is when you make a decision, the ripple down effect is so extreme. I don't think the companies are educated to understand that ripple down, meaning you input these master files, this, and it gets so complicated. We're talking about the medical industry, and it's I would say it's discrete in a sense, Sam, depending upon what products they're producing. So the level of SKUs that they have are, they could be 10 to 50,000 SKUs, and depending on what their arsenal looks like. And if you're doing that and the setup is wrong, monumental. And so I'm not sure there's AI that's can help something like this, because what happens is with AI, it can help, but the trust factor has to be tremendous for it to work in the way that's going to shortcut, because then I'm still going to have to go back and make it fix the problems that come about. But I don't know. I think this is such a long conversation that I'm not sure if it should not be undersold how extreme the conversation is.
The next story is pretty much the same, right?
Yeah. Charles, what do you think?
No, I think that's a great point, and I think to it. I had a friend that worked at Zimmer Biomet, and he was a salesman for them, and talk about the amount of SKUs that they have. It is quite tremendous. I assume it's probably hitting over the 100,000 mark. So it goes back to our points talking about having the right structure in place, and we can definitely talk about this for hours. So
this is not.
I'm more confused on or interested in how long this lawsuit's going to last for too, right? So they're looking for $170 million. They're worried about that. They're worried about the implementation. I think it's an interesting position Zimmer Biomet has found themselves in.
Well, just real quick, and Sam, you close it out, but this is a little different than an accounting system on QuickBooks that you're just doing, an implementation. This, what you said, 100,000 SKUs.
The customization tools.
For the customizations, how many facilities. It's a massive rollout. So 10 years later, here they are. So.
And then in the constantly changing environment on top of that.
Yep.
Yep.
So this for sure wasn't a simple project.
Yeah. Sam, you want to close us out on this one or go to the next one? What do you think?
Let's go to the next one. So this is also very interesting, Robert. I don't know. Do you want to cover this one?
Yeah, why don't you kick this one off?
Okay, let me do this. So this is also again the failure story, I guess, from it's not ERP. So they are calling vital income management system. Some people might call this as ERP as well. But 90% of any of the business process centric software, they are going to have very similar problems. In general, in this case, Oracle is involved. They do a lot of work in the public sector, and they do a lot of custom implementation. So obviously they are going to have much higher failure rate in general, because these implementations are even trickier, I would say. So here, some comments, they are saying designed to replace council's banking reconciliation system, which in my mind would be more of the treasury system. Something like Blackline. I don't know if you guys are familiar with that, which went so badly wrong after the April 2022 go live of Oracle Fusion. I don't know why you would try to build the banking reconciliation system on Oracle Fusion. Things are not adding up. It seems like the case of over customization. And there they are saying unable to file auditable accounts, etc. So obviously a lot of different problems. Before this, they were on SAP. So again, seems like a case of massive customization. And then they are saying they had a pass rate of 73% and 10 severe defects below the acceptance criteria of 95% pass rate. And my take on these stories is that you can keep fighting in the court, but I don't know if you are going to get anything out of it. The only thing that you are going to waste is probably your legal money. Otherwise you really don't get anything out of it. Vendors are very smart, they are sharp, and they know their game.
So to me, this is a project. It's like the other one. So it wasn't set up in a way, in the right way. I was involved into a kind of a city council merger and the corresponding systems merger. And they had initially, they tripled their budget to accomplish that. Why did they need to do that? Because they didn't set up the processes early enough. They didn't set up early warning systems to identify when it's going wrong. They didn't set up acceptance criteria early enough. So, precise enough acceptance criteria. I mean, 95% pass rate, zero severe defects. It's nice to say, nice to have, but what are my test cases? What are the expected functionalities that I want to have out of it? And if you are starting developing that only late in the process, which I assume happened here, then disgruntled testers find one thing after the other.
Yeah. So Thomas, the 80% of the implementations that we see, to be completely honest, the customers are confused about how to write user stories. They very rarely write. Okay, they are extremely confused about what are the test cases. What is the point of that? So obviously, I mean, when you have that, then what are you going to get out of it?
This, to me, again, I wasn't involved, but the whole thing, the whole setup, as I read it here, it seems to me like a Big Bang approach, which is not the wisest choice for this type of project.
And that's why this is.
Oh, go ahead, Charles.
No. I think this is a story that's quite common in the government entities when they deploy enterprise software. I feel like, Sam, you mentioned earlier, there was a big ERP failure in the U.S. I believe it was some city in Alabama. Correct me if I'm wrong, anyone. But I think this goes. It's more of this one. I think in particular is more on the customer. You think about the governance, the process, and readiness. I think this organization or this entity pretty much try to move the problem from SAP to Oracle, and the platform's not going to fix a broken organization structure. And going back to that heavy customization, I think. Ultimately another recipe for disaster. So
I don't know if the application was a good fit or not. So that's could be a major problem with the whole scenario. I don't know enough about it, but you mentioned the government, so I would think that would probably make it a little bit more challenging for the implementation, for working times and things of that nature. The customizations is a big component of this as well. And then the change management. And I don't know what they were on before to decipher whether this was a major change or a minor change or anything of that nature. But going back to the previous story, nobody wins on these things. I mean, the company I worked for a long time ago, we did get sued by one company that out of all the clients we had, there was only one. And it ended up at the end just it's changing the smallest amount of money, the most amount of pain that you could ever have, causing confusion. And it was really about, it turned out it was the employees of that company that just didn't have the wherewithal to run the liaison approach and run the steering committee. They didn't have the ability and their technical knowledge. So I think, Sam, you could probably say there's probably 20 different things that could pop up that could could cause a problem. And if 3 or 4 of those are it, then it's going to hit something like this. But in most cases, I still feel it's not the vendors, because you have so many successful implementations with this vendor that how do you not find a way to get it done? I do think it's kind of BS with that 73%, and there's still 10 severe deficits. That doesn't make me feel like that's acceptable or not.
Yeah.
I mean, being severe is not acceptable. So that's
Yeah.
my
So
two-
depending upon how, I mean, sometimes we have seen that implementations are going to be really problematic. And that is because, and again, it has nothing to do with the company that is representing or working on this, right? Sometimes you might have B or C team, the person did not know, maybe they overcommitted on their resume or whatever, or maybe they assigned somebody who just did not know what they are doing. So it's not uncommon to see something like this, Robert. But sometimes that is also, again, when you customize anything, the more you are going to customize, the more trouble you are inviting for yourself, unless you are going to be very structured and thinking the way Thomas likes to think. But in the case of ERP, your thinking is going to be paid, right? So when you write those user stories, acceptance criteria, test cases, if you have to write all of that, that's a very expensive process. And people are not willing to spend in that process. That's where the major problem is. Okay. Everything starts with money. Okay. If you spend right amount of money, you are never going to have problems. But the problem is that people don't want to believe that this costs money, and it costs this much money. And then they are either going to, press the vendor that, okay, maybe the project was supposed to be done maybe in 500 hours, and you are allocating maybe 300 hours. So what is going to happen? People are going to cut corners somewhere, and something is going to pop.
That's the problem too. And but we do have a question, I think, that's apropos. Maybe we can talk about that question, because it leads into some of what we're talking about, and it deals with change management and processes. So implementations typically fail because of poor planning, poor test cycles, internal resistance, and bad implementers. Alas, whether SAP, it's basically all the software vendors get the blame. So do we think that this is basically part of the change management and putting things in place to be ready for this? It's, putting these implementations are like climbing a mountain, so are they ready to climb the mountain? I'd say it's probably, that's why they fail, because they're not ready.
Well, Sam puts it succinctly, I'd say. And Andy is right, but he's covering the whole, basically 80% of what can be done wrong, if not more. Yeah. And what Sam basically says, this results in doing it on the cheap. Because what happens first? Two things are cut first in an implementation project, which is the QA part and the change management part. Those are getting cut out of the budget pretty much immediately when you submit it. And then you are adding with poor test cycles, have internal resistance. As a consequence of that, the planning is poor. And then the implementer basically doesn't matter anymore.
True. I think the big thing too is kind of building upon what Andy was saying here about internal resistance, and I also think it's the lack of internal expertise as well. That's a big barrier to AI adoption and really just these deployments in general. Is that there really is no dedicated team that's there to understand this transition, to help build those processes for the future. I think it's just kind of you're pulling individuals from their various day job activities, and this is more of a side project when this should really be like a main dedicated project for however long it should take. So I find this one more on the customer end here, and going back to what you're saying, Robert, about change management, I think that's such a topic that people just overlook. They talk about it after the fact, but I think you need to establish it before you even invest or even start looking at some of these vendors, saying, okay, this is going to create a giant ripple effect in our organization. Are we prepared to handle that internally? Because think about, these are the people utilizing the software, driving value within the company. If they're not on board, there's no value realized, and the payback period is going to be astronomical.
You're right.
I actually think it's important when you're putting an implementation together is to bring temporary people in, or contract people to actually do the work of the company, and then the people that did the work to actually be part of the implementation.
Sure.
They're trained, they understand
Good
it.
idea.
The contemporary people they don't really care as much. There's no allegiance to the situation. And I think that the staffing is the resource allocation is a key component to the change management. But it's complicated.
So on this comment, Robert, I'm going to set some expectations here on blame game. How to play that. You are way too kind, so you might not know how to play the blame game. But generally, the way this works is, you are not supposed to blame yourself, right? So customers are not supposed to blame themselves if they fail. Executives are probably not going to own this. So who gets blamed? Obviously, it has to be vendors. It's very clear. Yeah. So that's why, the vendors and providers. But at the same time, again, going back to my comment related to comedy of errors, it starts from the get-go. So you need to start right to be able to do it right. Otherwise, you are always going to have these challenges, and you're always going to have blame game, which in this case, obviously, are going to be vendors, always.
Or the SI.
All the SIs. Bottom of the food chain, right, Thomas? Developers, they are the problems always.
Of course.
And I think the
QA people and the poor QA people are the enemies because they are pointing the fingers they're poking where it's hurting.
Yes.
I think the whole notion around resistance too is a bit ridiculous. I think that's why establishing that team internally and driving that change is so important, because resistance, I think, comes back to the lack of education and understanding that these tools aren't meant to automate your work away. They're ultimately they're ultimately enablers that allow you to do more and drive bigger impacts in the business. And I think that just is something that's often talked about after the fact too much also. So
true. Do we have time for one quick more, Sam? You think?
Yeah, let's do one more. Yeah, this is very in line with the ones that we have covered so far.
That one fits too.
So SAP's been investigated for, I guess, maintenance charges, and is it mostly because they feel that the charges are more the customers aren't getting anything about it from an innovation perspective, and the auto charging reoccurring charges, I guess. And I don't know if I agree with the commissioner here, and I think that SAP has the ability to do that, because if you're on their software, they can charge. But this is my opinion.
So I think my take on the story is that they are limiting the third-party maintenance options, and that's where I guess Romania is probably going to have a little problem.
I guess I cover the vendor side and you cover the customer side. So I think the vendors are mostly right here. Don't go stay on my software then. You're on my maintenance. You signed the contract. I'm not. That's what am I supposed to do? Not make money? I know they're making a lot of money, but the point is they have the right to charge for maintenance. And okay.
But it's not only of course they have the right to charge for maintenance. What the EU is complaining about, quote unquote, is that the wording in the contract is not only charging for maintenance, but also making fairly sure that you, Robert, with your SAP instance, do not go to Rimini Street to get the maintenance cheaper.
Yeah.
So there's a pretty strong discouragement in there that the EU complains about that. So I'm not a lawyer, so I don't say whether this is right or wrong.
I'd take that stance too if I was SAP. I don't want you going to my competitors to get mine, get my maintenance for cheaper. It's just my opinion. I developed it. Why would I let somebody else? The problem should be between SAP and that company, not the customers necessarily.
So, Robert, the problem with the software industry is that there's a fine line between selling something versus monopolizing the whole market. When you monopolize the whole market, obviously government, they don't want that. They don't appreciate that.
It's their software, though.
Sorry, what's that?
It's their software, not.
It is their software, but they are also running the whole world. They are running the whole ecosystem. They are also running the maintenance. SAP is much bigger than
look at Apple, look at Microsoft, look at all these other big companies. Qualcomm.
Apple, what is the impact? Everybody's carrying a phone. So what's the big deal? It's not a big deal, But with SAP, it's a big deal. because you are literally running the accounting system as well as the financial systems of the whole world. That is a much bigger impact. Everybody's
That-
sort of playing by
Kudos
your
to
rules.
them. They bought it though. They bought it from SAP. They didn't have to buy it. They could have bought something else. Now they're getting the support. Go get the support somewhere else.
That's where the problem is, and that's what they are arguing about, that SAP is not making it easier for the customers to find the third-party support options. That's the argument here.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because they don't want anybody owning that data. And that's another
And
part of them.
we are not saying whether it's right or wrong that they charge. What they do, and there the EU is probably right, they make it hard for you to get your maintenance somewhere else. So why would you want to get your maintenance somewhere else? Call them Rimini Street or call them Spinnaker or call them whatever. Yeah? This is because you probably would like to free the funds that help you finance the business transformation that you need to do in order to get into the cloud.
So,
So
Robert,
which you can't do if you are still tied to the pretty significant amount that you're paying to the same vendor that probably also wants to move you into the cloud. So there's a bind in there.
yeah.
And that needs to get overcome, or probably needs to get overcome. I don't say that the maintenance fees are too high or not. I don't judge that here.
So, Robert, overall, the problem that we have had in the software market always is that, should software companies be allowed to sell the consulting services as well as the support services? Because there is no end to that, right? The reason for that is because you are not only competing with the channels and consulting companies, you are also competing with your own customers. Because you are competing with those executives, their jobs. So where is the fine line here? Okay, then you can take everybody's jobs, and then the only company that is making money is probably going to be software vendors. So which would mean that they are probably monopolizing the market, and that's where the line is. So I think there is a limited regulation in this particular space, that how much consulting services or professional services software companies should be allowed to sell. And with like, if you go to an accounting firm, would you ask them to do your entire business model and entire business? I think there is a fine line that if they are doing audit, they should not be doing anything else. But I mean, generally, that's not how the real world works. But they have some regulations there.
Yeah. Well, we don't have to agree. I think that it goes both ways. The vendor has a serious point here. And
I don't even say that we are disagreeing, Robert.
Yeah. They own their landscape and they're protecting it. And then, like you said, are they going overboard on what they're claiming? What they can do?
Line that the EU wants to establish, whether they put it on the right point in the scale, right, between 0 and 100. The line that they want to establish is where do bad business practices start and end, or business practices that pull the customer over the table, basically shaft them, to put it negatively. Where does it start? And as Andy said, so the maintenance revenue, the gross margin of maintenance is well in the 80%. In the 80%. This is where on-premise vendors typically finance their ongoing development from.
Yeah,
I think this just shows that there's an ungodly amounts of money organizations are spending on support tickets and just customizations and maintenance in general. And, I think from a high level, business is war and everyone is trying to compete for those dollars. And Sam, to what you were saying, it's basically executives trying to, I wouldn't say take jobs from one another, but, it's a highly competitive world. And if just FSAP wants to ultimately kind of cannibalize the market, that's really up to them. And the EU has the right to step in, but ultimately not surprised. There's a lot of money at stake that someone wants to get their hands on, right?
Yeah. So we are really
the Oracle move, by the way, I don't think it's a smart one, because they are basically admitting that they are screwing their customers with it. It's basically what they do there, right?
Yes, Robert, I don't think we are going to have time for the comment anymore. I think we are close to our time right now, so we'll probably close. By the way, Andy, I was trying different layouts on StreamYard, but seems like, I mean, it cannot handle longer comments. So I think you broke StreamYard, right?
Mhm.
So maybe have a little shorter comments so that StreamYard can handle. Robert, I don't know if we should close. We should, right?
Yeah, why don't you just wrap it up? I think that everybody, we're at the top of the hour. We don't want to take too many people's time that are watching and for all of us. But maybe if you want to just wrap it up and then go Blue Jays.
Yeah, so we are closing time. This is going to be exciting week for all of us. Hopefully Blue Jays can do well. I mean, that's what I'm going to pray. I don't know what you all are rooting for, but we'll support. We meet every Thursday for this conversation. So we'll be here next week. Thank you so much for dialing in.
Awesome. Take care, everyone.